Welcome to Core Performance Resilient Leadership Series, where brilliant, resilient leaders share uncommon secrets and strategies to succeeding in life and business. Now, here's your host, Julie.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Julie Hutchinson, founder and CEO of Core Performance and creator of the Resilient Leadership Series, where I get the honor of interviewing fascinating, big-hearted leaders who have brilliant minds and are resilient in the face of adversity. Today, I have the honor of introducing Matt Collier. Matt holds degrees from West Point and Harvard University. He served as an airborne ranger, infantry officer in the U.S. Army. In 1987, Matt was elected as the youngest big city mayor in the United States in Flint, Michigan at only 29 years of age. Following his 4-year career as mayor, Matt served on executive roles with several technology companies, including over 13 years of president and CEO experience and company ownership. Most recently, Matt served as a senior advisor to the secretary at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, responsible for all major partnerships outside of the VA. He is currently founder and CEO of VetAccel, principal and chief strategy advisor for OutcomeMD. He is senior advisor with the Fieldstone Equity Partners in Houston, chairman emeritus of board of directors of One World, which is a nonprofit youth leadership and character development organization. He resides on the boards of the Concussion Legacy Foundation and the National Association of Veterans Research and Education Foundation. Matt serves on the faculty of the Thayer Leadership Group at West Point and is frequently a guest lecturer on effective leadership at schools such as Harvard University, University of Michigan Ross School of Business, UCLA Anderson School of Management, and the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Hi, Matt, and welcome.
Oh, thanks, Julie. Wow. That's a very nice introduction. Thank you.
Well, I'm really happy to have you here. And as I just shared with our audience, you've been a prominent and very successful leader. And as leaders in business, having an authentic leadership style and really staying true to your values and mission, that's a skill set that can set you apart and make a huge difference in how you lead and live your life. So I'm really honored that you're here today because we're going to talk about this especially important subject of authentic leadership, staying true to you and your values, especially in the midst of chaos. So I'd love to talk about how you really find this essential as being a leader.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at leadership, it's so hard to try to figure out exactly what leadership is. And people have studied it for years, and there really is no one underlying, definition of leadership. It's different for different people, right? It's kind of like trying to hold mercury in your hand or something like that. It's something that's fairly elusive. Over the years, a lot of experts, some have said you're born with it. Others have said you learn it. Others have said it's a product of your experience. So who knows what the actual definition is? I know I've done a lot of thinking on it and have been in a lot of leadership situations. I've had a lot of failures, and you probably learn more from failure, I think, than you do from success. And I've had some successes as well. But when you break it all down, it's you're absolutely right. One of the basics for leadership is being authentic and true to yourself. I think that if you're not, it shines through. And but there are a lot of other parts to leadership as well.
Well, at 29 years old, being elected mayor of a large city, I'm sure at 29 years old, we're still growing and learning and understanding who we are. And as you were elected at 29, I'm sure that because of your experience in the military and graduate at West Point, you had a lot of values already instilled in you. So what were some of those values that had you lead a city at such a young age?
Well, I mean, I was born and raised in Flint, blue collar type of environment, blue collar type family. So, my dad went to work every day, and that was that, right? Rain or shine, or 3 feet of snow, he was going to work every day, and that. So I think there's a certain amount of work ethic that actually was instilled in me. And people have asked me in the past, what is leadership? And I think the short answer is working very hard, working smart. In other words, being efficient, not wasting time, sort of being focused, and leading by example. And I think if there were 3 things as far as values are concerned, those would be it. I mean, and again, you mentioned the authenticity. Staying true to yourself is important too. In different kinds of situations, foster different kinds of leadership. So it's kind of like you have to have a quiver, and you have different arrows in your quiver. Sometimes you have to be tenacious. Sometimes you have to be patient. Sometimes you have to be calm, cool, and collected. And I think when I was, as far as growing up is concerned, I had 4 brothers, and I kind of had to. I was number 4 out of 5, so I had to fend for myself, and learn how to get along with others. So, I think those are some of the things, some of the values I think I brought to the table, and I knew, coming out of high school and going to West Point and playing hockey, playing a sport is always, being competitive is another one of those sort of things, that one of those values maybe that I brought to the table. But sort of striving to improve humankind was something too that I was brought up with. So I know I've said a lot, there's a lot in there, but that's the whole point. There's a whole potpourri of values that come into any leadership situation, and it's sort of how you leverage those and how you use those that will dictate, success or failure.
I think one of the main things that you said in all of that is striving to make humankind better. And when we talk about that, that's sort of like the North Star. Your North Star is that underneath everything that you're doing, from the service in the military to CEO positions to serving as mayor, it sounds to me like you have that North Star of how do we make humankind better, stronger, united together. And I know that we had talked in the past a little bit about your leadership when you were with the VA. You had a really prominent role there, that you were responsible for all major partnerships outside of the VA. And it was a brand new position that you were stepping into. You were carefully selected for that position. Can you share a little bit about that, and maybe some of the challenges that you had, and how you kept that North Star of making humankind better through these partnerships for the VA?
Yeah, well, that's a good point, Julie. I mean, so the North Star, if you will, at the VA was helping veterans, right? The VA is the largest healthcare network in the country, 350,000 employees, 170 major hospitals, over 1,200 outpatient clinics, 1,800 academic affiliates. It's a big place. The budget, I think, for healthcare alone is about, $80 billion a year just for the healthcare piece of it. The benefits piece is $100 billion as a pass-through, and then there's a cemetery piece for a smaller amount. But the VA you're right, it's a huge organization with huge ramifications, with 9 million veterans that are in the system. And the problem or the challenge with a large organization like that, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, and I think especially in the public sector, is the bureaucracy. And so you have a lot of people constantly telling you that they've never done this before. That's never going to happen. You're never going to get that done. Why should you waste your time? That's a dumb idea. A lot of negativity, and some of it's an excuse for just being lazy. Other people really don't think you can do it. And so you have to have a very strong will to reach that, or North Star, as you say, to improve whatever it happens to be. And in this case, for the VA, it was improving the lives of veterans. I remember one example. We had a situation where we wanted to build a new hospital, and we were working with the community of Omaha, Nebraska, to do that. And they had created an organization called Heritage Services, and we wanted to be able to mix public money from the VA with private money from Omaha. And Omaha is just absolutely a wonderful community to work with. But we had really some major issues trying to work together. The first thing we had to do was pass a law so that the law would allow the money to be used together, public and private money used together. That's it's something you can't do, right, under normal circumstances. And so we actually had to pass a law. And that took a year to do that, just a little less than a year. In fact, it was the last law passed in the Obama administration, of which I was part of. But it took another, 6 months or so to actually work through the VA, work through the financial end of it, work through where they had to give up some control because it was a partnership, and the legal side of it, to actually work within the VA to get that hospital finalized as far as the approval was concerned. So I just say that because it's so difficult. You have to keep your eye on the ball. You have to keep focused. And of course, everybody said it couldn't be done. And actually, as we have this interview, the actual opening of that hospital, because this was started in 2016, this whole process. But the hospital actually is set to open in August of this year.
Wow.
So it actually did happen, and it actually got done. But I think, to your larger point, Julie, there's another North Star, and that is the North Star that drives people to do good things anyway. From in the private sector, it's one thing to make a widget and be rewarded financially, but in the public sector, it's another thing to actually do things and make people's lives better. And so my career has been kind of I've been most of my time in the private sector, 20 some years in the middle, sandwiched between being a mayor, where I focused on crime, being sort of against crime, 4 jobs and a balanced budget, and city services. And then, as a guy in the VA at a high level, working to make the lives of veterans better. So, I think I got lucky by having that kind of a rich experience, but you're 100% right. There is an aspect of following your conscience to make the world a better place. And I think it's ironic, but the 2 most rewarding jobs I've had in leadership positions have been those 2 public sector jobs. They haven't been financially rewarding, but they've been more than the jobs themselves more than make up for that by the reward that you feel by doing good things for other people. They were just a blast and the most fun I ever had, those 2 jobs.
Wow, you've said so much there. And first, I'd like to say congratulations on the opening of that hospital in August of this year. That's quite an accomplishment. And when you talk about
thanks. Yeah, quite proud of that.
Yeah, you talk about your North Star of doing good things. I think in the climate that we're in today, just so much happening. The world is changing so drastically. It's changing in how we do business and how we look at the world. And one of the things that you said that I think is really important for leaders is really to be connected to their North Star, like to be connected to it from their hearts, from that place of passion. And what I'm really hearing you say is that your passion and what you're doing is improving the lives of people, whether it's veterans or the community or where you're a mayor. And when we are leaders and we hold a vision, not everybody's going to agree with that vision, but you have such passion for what you do. And the story that you told about working with the VA and the private sector is there were a lot of roadblocks. I mean, you had to pass a law to be able to get the money to use it for the opening of this hospital. So can you talk a little bit about when you're so passionate about something and you can see the vision and you can see it happening, But then you have a lot of naysayers that say it'll never get done. I don't want to do it. This is going to take too long. It's impossible. How do you internally within yourself, how do you internally stay focused on that solution or your outcome? And then talk about externally, how do you as a leader inspire and enroll other people to your vision to accomplish it?
Wow. Well, it depends on the situation, but that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the heck I do sometimes, Julie. Sometimes I make it up as I go, but I'll try to give you an example or two. But so in the situation you're talking about at the VA, when I first got there at the VA, and I ended up being there for 2.5 years, but when I first got there, the legal people would just a lot of times just say, we can't do that. And here's why, because of this, this, and this, and this. And I would just sort of swallow hard, and I would just bite my tongue, take a deep breath, and be sort of calm, cool, and collected, and try to say, okay, so this is one problem, this is another problem. I'd sort of reinforce what they just said, and so that I understood it, but that they could hear it for themselves. And I say, well. And I would just tell them, and kind of a North Star. I'd say, this is what we want to do. We want to do X, but we need to do A, B, C. We need to get through all these different obstacles to do it. And I said, help me figure out how to get through this one. How, do we go through it? Do we ignore it? Do we go around it? Do we mitigate somehow? And then this one, and then this one, and sort of pick them all off one at a time. But I enlist their support in the larger goal. I sort of end up putting us on the same side of the table. In my mind, I actually figuratively picture that. I literally picture that in my mind, that I'm on the same side of the table with the person that I'm working with, so that we can have a common goal. And it sounds really weird, I think, or too easy, too simple, but it actually works really well. I do the same thing in negotiating a contract, in this private side. It's just it's kind of the principle of that old book called Getting to Yes. Everybody read it, I don't know, 30 years ago probably, but it's one of the principles they talk about in that book. But the whole idea is to sort of be on the same side of the table as the people on the as the people that are disagreeing with you, and that's one way to inspire. The other way, or to motivate, you basically get somebody to do their job in a weird way. But and there are other ways to inspire. I mean, to be a good speaker, I mean, sometimes you have to get in front of groups of people and, have the courage to get up there and make a speech and talk about the goals that you're trying to deliver, so that you get a team together. While we're on the subject, one of the, I started off by talking about working hard, working smart, and leading by example, but leadership is much more than that, much more nuanced, much more complicated, than that. And I recently gave a talk, and one of the things I talked about was leading in a toxic environment. And there are 4 or 5 things that I emphasize there when you break it down. And one of those things, to get to the point where you can be patient, where you can work with other people, that you can be calm, cool, and collected, one of the first things I thought about is to take care of yourself. And that is to work out, to get enough sleep, to eat right, and that kind of thing. And of course, I hadn't figured that out till I got much older. But when you're in better physical condition, you're mentally able to make better decisions and lead people, I think. The second thing was to have a healthy mindset. I think, everybody talks about all these attributes, being positive, being calm, being patient, being tenacious, confident, all those things. I think that mindset, part of having a healthy mindset is taking care of yourself. The third thing is, and I just mentioned it, is communication skills. I think you always have to have good communication skills. If you're going to get some overarching things done, communications is a real important part of that. The fourth thing is courage. Churchill said that courage is the most important of all human qualities, because it's the quality which guarantees all the others. And I agree with him. It's somewhere in your heart, you have to have the moxie, the chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, to get in front of people. Because if you're not in front of people, you're not leading, you're following. So you have to have the courage to get out front, instead of just being with the pack, the courage to run for political office, the courage to start a new company, the courage to lead a company, the courage to make high-level decisions and put yourself on the line. And then the fifth one is that you can't do it alone. You need to do it with a team. And you alluded to this earlier. There's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I firmly believe that. So, I mean, and I could talk all day about all those different aspects of leadership, but for me, when I break it down, those are sort of the 4 or 5 things that I think are at the core of leadership. That, you know, in all of that, one of the underpinnings is, as you say, authenticity, being true to yourself. So that's a long answer to a short question, but thought I'd get that out there.
So many golden nuggets that you had shared in there, so many. And one that I really heard you say is, you know, when you were at the VA, you had a huge job ahead of you, and you were leading the pack in the sense that they had never done this before. They created the position for you because not for you, but they knew that it needed to be done, and you were the perfect person to do it. And what I think is really neat about your style is you do hold true to yourself. And it's these main points that you gave. I think you gave this leadership in a toxic environment at Harvard. And the principles of taking care of yourself and having a healthy mindset keeps you really focused, because when you have that vision like you did at the VA and you come across people that oppose you or say it can't be done, one of the neatest things that I believe you shared is that you bit your tongue and you remain calm, cool, and collected. And I know there's so much talk these days about the importance of emotional intelligence. As a matter of fact, in 2019, it said it was one of the top 10 skill sets for a leader. And if you chose to get promoted, that was one of the most important things that you could cultivate was emotional intelligence. So I'm hearing through your stories how important that was, learning how to bite your tongue, taking a deep breath, and that's the internal piece of it. What I loved about what you said about the external piece of it is getting on the same side of the table. Picturing, like literally visualizing in your mind, having that common goal and sitting on the same side of the table. I recently read a book, highly recommend it. It's called Never Split the Difference. And it's about a former FBI agent. He was a hostage negotiator, one of the top in the FBI. And it's a fantastic book because each chapter he opens it up with a real life scenario of a hostage negotiation, many of which you'll recognize just from the news. And basically what he says is exactly that. Get on the same side of the table. Have empathy for the position that the other person is in. Because as leaders, of course, there's going to be people that say, I'm not doing that. That's the craziest idea. We can't do it. It's never been done before. When we can chunk that down and understand what their roadblocks are and have empathy with where they are and then inspire. What you shared is that you broke down the obstacles by giving them a voice, letting them be heard, but then enrolling into the vision. And what's really neat about this, Matt, is that in your heart of hearts, your integrity and your values are the value of humanity and making humanity better. And you had shared with me at one point, you know, what I worked on at the VA wasn't a veterans problem. It was a humanitarian problem. Like, it's not just veterans that have TBI or PTSD. All humans, not all of us, but we go through different things, and some of us end up with PTSD. And so having that is really incredible.
Well, yeah, the VA, I mean, you talk about some of the sort of mitigating and solving healthcare problems. The VA people don't realize it. The VA sort of gets a bad rap because there's so many medical centers, and so with that amount of healthcare that you do, you're going to have mistakes and things like that. It's just the nature of the business. But people don't realize. I mean, there were like 7 Lasker Awards, 3 Nobel Prizes been awarded. The Bakey, who did all the heart pioneering, was a VA doc. The first liver transplant was done at a VA hospital. The nicotine patch was discovered. First heart pacemaker, electronic health records, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of great innovative things were discovered at the VA. And these problems, as you say, are not just veteran problems. These are problems that are, omnipresent all over America and all over the globe when you talk about, organ transplants and the kinds of medical things. These aren't just for veterans. These are for global citizens. So yeah, I mean, one of the great things we did, the great things that actually came to fruition was precision medicine at the VA that I had a role in. I'm very proud to say. But basically, we put together a program whereby we replicated what was done with prostate cancer with precision medicine. So this is a long story, but basically, the Prostate Cancer Foundation was created, and they invested. A guy named Michael Milken invested, I think, invested about $750 million in prostate research. He had prostate cancer, created this foundation, and they basically halved the death rate over some 20, 25 years.
Wow.
And so I was giving a talk out there in Santa Monica where they're based. And, anyway, the guy who ran the foundation, a guy named Jonathan Simons, and I were talking about it. And I said, well, why can't we do that for veterans, for other kinds of cancer? And so now fast forward to today, we have a prostate, not just for prostate cancer, but the 4 major cancers that affect veterans the most. We're trying to reduce the death rate. And as Jonathan always said, hey, look, we're trying to cure cancer. I mean, there's no greater cause. Well, there are a lot of great causes in healthcare, but that's one of the big challenges, is to figure out a way to cure cancer. And when you're, to your point earlier, Julie, when you're involved in that kind of stuff at a high level and you're making decisions that involve, millions of veterans and hundreds of millions of people in humanity, it's a very gratifying kind of thing. And when you talk about that North Star, it really makes me go, and I think it makes a lot of people go when they're helping to solve those kinds of problems.
Absolutely. We look at that in helping to solve those problems, and I also look at belief systems, right? We talk about uncommon belief systems that people have who are successful leaders. And you are now currently the founder and CEO of VetAccel, and you're a principal and chief strategy advisor for OutcomeMD. So you have so much success in your past and currently. Can you talk a little bit about your uncommon belief systems that have you continuously create these incredible companies to service not just veterans, but humanity as a whole?
Well, I mean, wow. Thank you for that. So part of trying to solve big problems is taking one small step at a time. It's not easy. When you look at a problem like cancer or healthcare or any number of kinds of challenges in the healthcare world. I think one element of all that is to take one step at a time. The old saying goes, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So, I don't know how I get into these things. I think it's kind of funny. In retrospect, it looks like, this happened or that happened, or like it's a plan, right? Well, it's not. It's sort of part of it is opportunistic, part of it is logical, part of it is just things come together, part of it is serendipitous, You know, you have good luck, you have bad luck, and you take advantage of the situations you're in. So it's not always by plan. After, you know, when I had spent, you know, and you went over my background, but basically I spent some years in the military. I spent some years in the public sector, and part of that in elective office. And then I spent, you know, a number of years in the private sector. I couldn't have predicted that Bob McDonald, who ran the VA at the time, and the president had just appointed, would call and say, "Hey, look, Matt, I want you to help me, you know, fix the VA." Now, I could have said no and had gone on to something else, but I said yes. That would be a lot of fun. I'm honored to do it, and you know, came into the VA. So some of these opportunities are just taking advantage of the situations that come your way, and kind of like keeping your eyes and ears open. I always think of you know, a guy like General Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, who, you know, here's this guy who has been pretty much a failure his whole life, and I think he's about his late 30s, his mid 30s. The Civil War starts. Within 4 years, he's the commander of all U.S. Union forces, and then never loses a battle, becomes president of the United States. When this guy was, you know, selling wood on the streets of St. Louis to make money, he was in abject poverty, but he was a great leader, but untapped, right? So he hadn't taken advantage of those opportunities, and then this opportunity hit, and boom, same thing happened.
That really goes to the fourth point of having courage to act. That was a lot of courage.
Same sort of thing happened. Yeah, same sort of thing happened to Truman. I mean, really, he just when Roosevelt died, he was in the hot seat, and you know, here's a guy who nobody expected anything from, and he gets in there, and he probably becomes one of the best international leaders ever. He's a guy, he comes up with the Marshall Plan. He even names it the Marshall Plan after World War II, because if he named it the Truman Plan, it wouldn't have gotten passed. But he dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A lot of debate here today about whether that was the right thing to do or not. But at the time, it was absolutely the right thing to do to stop the war and prevent millions of lives to be lost for Americans. He was the architect of the Berlin airlift. He started the CIA. He fired MacArthur, and I'm a West Point grad, and I think that was the right thing to do. He did a lot of things. He started the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations. Just so many different things he did in the international realm. And he put Europe back together, as I mentioned, alluded to with he integrated the armed services, blah, blah, blah. The guy just was an amazing leader, but untapped until that time, until Roosevelt died. Then boom, he was in the hot seat. And like Grant, he really, really performed. So I guess the message is, you know, your opportunity to lead may be right around the corner in a big, big way, because it can happen, whether it's a company, whether it's elective office, whether it's a military promotion. You know, it just depends on the situation. But I think when people get that opportunity to lead, take it. And I think that's part of the lesson there.
Well, it's so beautiful. And to wrap all of this up, yes, I believe a lot of things are serendipitous in our lives. And when we keep our eye on the opportunities and look for those serendipitous moments, you're going to see more of them. And what I find with leadership is oftentimes when I work with some leaders, what I hear them say is, it's so difficult because nobody else shares my same vision. And to hold true to that and hold that emotionally and intellectually, I think is a big key, because when we can hold that and be true to our core values, and, you know, when we're passionate about something and hold those values and integrity, that's when those serendipitous opportunities open up, in my opinion, in my experience, and people that I work with. And so, yes, it is a blend of all of these. It's a blend of the holding your North Star logically, emotionally, looking for opportunities and noticing when those serendipitous moments come up. So, Matt, this has been fantastic. I've learned a lot from you today. I hope the listeners have learned a lot today. And I think you're right. Just keep your eye on the ball and look for the opportunities, and you never know when you're going to be called to really act on your courage.
Well, thanks, Julie. I'm honored, and I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, Matt.
All right. You too. Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Resilient Leadership Series. To learn more about Julie and Core Performance, go to www.coreperformance.us and be sure to join our private Facebook group, Leaders Without Limits. We will see you next time.